Hey everybody, it's Kelly. Welcome back to another episode of Ask a Therapist. Today I want to talk to you about how the church takes mental health concerns and makes them moral dilemmas. Because that's the thing that has made a lot of society and a lot of us see people who are struggling with their mental health, maybe ourselves, in a lesser light or in a negative light. This happens in a very simple, very subtle type of way. The church itself, in general, takes natural, understandable desires, wants, actions, and makes them shameful and makes you feel shame for them. That's purity culture. That's shaming. That's keeping people in line and helping us to hate the natural urges that happen in our lives. That extra step of,
well, now you're bad.
Now you are unclean.
Now you are doing things that are against God and against what we've taught you to do, and you can't be trusted until you fix it.
That shame is used to keep people in line and keep people down. It's also used when it comes to questioning authority or asking why they believe certain things when science has backed up other things instead of what they believe. But you're told not to question that. You're told not to wonder about anything. Really, lean not on your own understanding. Really mixed up in that is this understanding that people who are dealing with mental health concerns are somehow morally questionable. The church will take the shame that they've instilled in you and tell you it's a conviction from God, or it's a conviction from you knowing what's right in your heart. And then that goes another step further into you understanding that you've gone against your own heart and against your own nature. And now that's bad, which also means you're bad. One of the control tactics that's used by the church is taking common behaviors, natural behaviors, and making them shameful. Shame itself, like we talked about a couple weeks ago, is first instilled externally. People telling you that something you're doing is wrong and then becomes guilt. They're the same thing in the church, right? Psychologically, they're different things, but within the church, they're kind of the same. It becomes guilt inside of you. So let's take, for example, someone who is looking at someone that they are attracted to and thinking that they're hot. The church would tell you you are looking at them with lust and then point you to these Bible verses that tell you to do things to yourself to harm yourself because you've looked at someone in a way that our bodies are meant to look at someone. Understand, there is a difference between looking at someone and our bodies having a reaction to them and objectifying people. I'm not talking about the objectifying part. I'm talking about just that gut reaction to something. Or also the church makes you feel bad about wanting anything. If you see something that someone else has and you're like, oh, I would like that, or I want to have that in my life. Now you're jealous and you're envious, and there's something wrong about that because there are morals attached to these values, negative or positive. Being selfless is a positive moral trait. You are righteous and you are good, and there is something amazing about the way you're living your life because you are selfless. If you are selfish, you are also bad. I see this all of the time in some of the comments we get on the channel and other interactions in my life where people think that wanting something for themselves is bad, and that has come directly from religion, whether it's their religion or their parents' religion or the way our country is steeped in religion, even if you're not a religious person. These understandings of ourself and the morality that's connected to it gets into your bones, and it gets into the way that you deal with everything. The church has done a great job of sort of parlaying this into connecting mental health and morality. If you're in a place where you're balanced, you're not stressed out, you're not anxious about anything, then you are good. You're doing the right thing. They're proud of you. And if you are in a place where you are depressed, if you're anxious, if you're worried about the future, you are negative and you're taking your eyes off of God and you are bad, essentially. It is a common aspect of life to feel anxious sometimes. Sometimes we do worry about the future, and sometimes that's developmentally appropriate. But the church will take those very developmentally appropriate things or those very common aspects of human nature in general and make you feel shame about them. Because again, it's good or it's bad, right? And if you're doing things that are not in the good category, you're automatically bad. There's no gray, there's no sort of in between allowed. But putting that good and bad on everything is what then allows shame to take root into us. Typically in psychology, shame is external and guilt is internal. Within the church, they're the same thing, because the shame that you get from outside of you is called conviction when you finally feel it inside of you. It's connected. It's all the same. The understanding that you should feel conviction when you do something wrong. If you don't, you're in the bad category. Again, there's nothing that you can do to get out of it except do what they say. Do the praying, do the focusing on God. Don't worry about things. Don't allow yourself to feel the very common natural feelings that you have in life, because if you do, you are outside of their rules, which then makes you bad. There's also this idea of deception that comes into play when someone is doing something that is outside of the correct, the right side of things. The church sees them as manipulative. They're bringing in information or they're asking questions, and that is manipulating the system or manipulating the structure of things in order to have things go their way, which again, morality says that's bad, that's negative, they're wrong in doing that. When in reality, it is natural for us to ask questions about things. Wondering why things are the way they are and asking those questions is part of the human experience, and it's how we figure things out for ourselves instead of just doing the things that we're told to do. If the church can put a deceitful or manipulative spin on people doing these things, then they can easily put them into the bad category. When they do that, they make it really easy for people in the good category to not have compassion. If you believe that someone is intentionally doing the wrong thing, if you believe that someone is intentionally questioning or pulling away or ignoring the convictions that you've told them they have, you don't have to have compassion for the things they're going through. When someone's trying to figure out where they fit in this religious timeline, when people are trying to understand how they really feel about the religion they were raised in and the things they're told to believe, you can assign a negative meaning to that. How many of us, when we left the church, were told we didn't have enough faith or our belief in God was never real because if it was, we couldn't leave? They're assigning a morality to that really isn't appropriate because we're doing what naturally our bodies and minds need to do. Instead of understanding everyone's on an individual journey, it has to be this journey. It has to be the one inside, the one that they know, the one that they have said is the right way and makes you a good person. The way this ties into mental health is we are told within the church, all the wrong things are from humans, all the wrong things are from inside of us. So when you do get, say, depressed, when you do get anxious, you assume there's something wrong with you because that conviction sets in and you are not able to
just be happy
or
just don't worry
because you're not supposed to worry as a Christian. That's not a thing. Not worrying, that's not a thing. Everyone is going to worry sometimes in life. Inside of the church, bottom line, if you are feeling anything that is outside of peaceful, happy, giving, selfless, all the things that we talked about with shiny, happy people, you are bad because your feelings are bad. And when you are bad, you are much less likely to ask for help. You are much less likely to admit to yourself what's really going on in your life and to see things as maybe not your fault. You're more likely to blame yourself when you're coming out of a religion because you've been taught to blame yourself over everything that's wrong in you. And then you feel shameful for what you're going through, which encloses you even more into your shell, which makes it even harder for you to get out of that state, which then leads to even more isolation and people feeling broken and like there's something wrong with them. When you go through mental wellness concerns, when you have mental health struggles, that doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. That means you're a human living in a time when things become overwhelming in some way for you. And in a time that you should be supplied help and support and understanding that this is not the end of the world and that things can get better someday, or even instruction on how to help yourself or how to find a therapist that can help you. Instead of all of that, the church tells you, well, just pray, just be happy. Think about all the amazing things you have in your life and you will not be sad anymore. You won't be anxious anymore. And right now we're talking about depression and anxiety, which happen in most people's lives at some point, at least once. But yet we're told that these are bad things and we've done something wrong by feeling that way, which even after you've left the church, that stays with you. That assigning of morality to things is something you do all of the time. I like to take people through this exercise where they tell me about something they're doing. Say they're being selfish and making a decision. And I say, why is that bad?
like, because I'm not supposed to think of myself.
Why not?
Because people who think of themselves are,
And they can't use selfish because you can't use the word in the definition, right? So they're like,
because when I think of myself, I'm not thinking of others.
well, what's wrong with that?
Well, that's not the way I should be.
Why?
Because that's bad.
It always comes back to an assigning of a morality to something that is natural in your life. That's not something we need to be doing. That is something the church does in order to keep people in line. That is not something you need to continue, especially not after you've left the church or if you've never been in the church. Society as a whole does this a lot. And when it happens, it's so infuriating that the understanding there's good and bad, that there's always a right and a wrong in every situation is damaging to people. Because if you're on the wrong side, if you're the bad one, if you're the one who's going through something or making decisions that other people don't agree with, you see yourself in a negative light. And when you see yourself in that negative light, you go back into those dips and you go back into that worry and you go back into all those things that keep you continually isolated. Do you see how this cycle works? So unless you just do everything that the church is saying to do, or, society is saying to do, that's all happy. Don't be a bother. Don't be in people's way. Don't take up too much space. Don't have too many opinions. Don't be sad. Don't be worried. Don't have needs. Unless you're doing all those things that make you a good person, you're a bad person. Y'all, I need you to understand that having needs is not manipulative. Having a need in your life is not you being broken or a bad person. Your needs are your needs and they are appropriate because they are yours. Don't continue to let people assign morality to the things that you are going through. You don't go through hard times because you're a bad person, and you don't have great things in your life because you're a good person. That happens because life. Okay? You are allowed to have your own feelings, and you are allowed to not feel shame over struggling in some area of your life. And you're allowed to leave that shame behind. You don't need to carry that anymore. That wasn't yours initially. It was something that someone gave to you. Put it down. You don't need it anymore. That's it for today. Thank you so much for being here. I will see you all next time. And until then, take care of yourselves and each other.